Welcome back to Reading Through the Bible in a Year. My name is Paul Denai, and we can actually do that. We are going to read through the Bible in a year, but not only that, we're going to learn a lot about the United States of America and our founding fathers. It's an exciting adventure, and we are on April the 21st. We're going to read Psalms 112, Judges 13, 14, and 15, Proverbs chapter 19. Then we have an article. This is in the book of Proverbs, so we read this every month. And you might say, well, why do we do that? Well, because not everybody is reading through the Bible in a year. And so if you catch this, maybe your only one that you listen to, I want you to hear these extra readings. And so that's why we do it. Let's begin. We are going to turn in our Bibles to the book of Psalms and chapter 112.
Psalm 112.
Praise the Lord. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who delights greatly in his commandments. His descendants will be mighty on earth. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches will be in his house, and his righteousness endures forever. Unto the upright there arises light in the darkness. He is gracious and full of compassion and righteous. A good man deals graciously and lends. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Surely he will never be shaken. The righteous will be in everlasting remembrance. He will not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. His heart is established. He will not be afraid until he sees his desire upon his enemies. He has dispersed abroad. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. His horn will be exalted with honor. The wicked will see it and be grieved. He will gnash his teeth and melt away. The desire of the wicked shall perish.
Psalms 112. Let's turn now in our Bibles to the book of Judges. We're going to read 3 chapters, starting at chapter number 13.
Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now there was a certain man from Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her,
Indeed now, you are barren, and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child should be a Nazirite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines.
So the woman came and told her husband.
A man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of the angel of God, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. And he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb to the day of his death."
Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said,
"O my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born."
And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband and said to him,
"Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me."
So Manoah arose and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said to him,
"Are you the man who spoke to this woman?"
I am.
Now, let your words come to pass. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work?
Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe.
Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you.
Though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord."
For Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord,
"What is your name? That when your words come to pass, we may honor you."
Why do you ask my name? Seeing it is wonderful.
So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to the Lord. And he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. It happened, as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife,
"We shall surely die, because we have seen God."
If the Lord had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands. Nor would he have shown us all these things. Nor would he have told us such things as these at this time.
So the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Mahaneh Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol.
And now, chapter number 14.
Now Samson went down to Timnah, and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother.
"I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me as a wife."
Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?
Get her for me, for she pleases me well.
But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother, and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. He took some of it in his hands and went along, eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for young men used to do so. And it happened, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Samson said to them,
Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing.
Pose your riddle, that we may hear it.
Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet.
Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife,
Entice your husband, that he may explain the riddle to us. Or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so?
Then Samson's wife wept on him.
You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me.
Look, I have not explained it to my father or my mother. So should I explain it to you?
Now she had wept on him the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the 7th day, before the sun went down,
What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?
And he said to them,
If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would have not solved my riddle.
Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man.
And now chapter number 15.
After a while, in the time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat.
Let me go into my wife, into her room.
But her father would not permit him to go in.
I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please, take her instead.
This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them.
Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the fox's tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. When he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said,
"Who has done this?"
Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion.
So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Samson said to them,
"Since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you. And after that, I will cease."
So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Etam. Now the Philistines went up, encamped in Judah, and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said,
"Why have you come up against us?" "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us."
Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam, and said to Samson,
"Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us?"
As they did to me, so I have done to them.
"We have come down to arrest you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines."
Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves.
"No, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand. But we will surely not kill you."
And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said,
"With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men."
And so it was, when he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called that place Ramath Lehi. Then he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said,
"You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised?"
So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank. And his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called its name En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines.
Wow. The story of Samson. Now we're going to turn in our Bibles to the book of Proverbs. And today we are at Proverbs and chapter 19.
Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than one who is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also, it is not good for a soul to be without knowledge, and he sins who hastens with his feet. The foolishness of a man twists his way, and his heart frets against the Lord. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friend. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies will not escape. Many entreat the favor of the nobility, and every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. All the brothers of the poor hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He may pursue them with words, yet they abandon him. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies shall perish. Luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a servant to rule over princes. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. The king's wrath is like the roaring of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. A foolish son is the ruin of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dripping. Houses and riches are an inheritance from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Laziness casts one into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. He who keeps the commandment keeps his soul, but he who is careless of his ways will die. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. Chasten your son while there is hope. Do not set your heart on his destruction. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you rescue him, you will have to do it again. Listen to counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days. There are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel, that will stand. What is desired in a man is kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and he who has it will abide in satisfaction. He will not be visited with evil. A lazy man buries his hand in the bowl, and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. Strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Rebuke one who is understanding, and he will discern knowledge. He who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. Cease listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. A disreputable witness scorns justice, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools.
Amen. Proverbs chapter 19. And we have an article now. Now, this is a rather lengthy article, so if you have time, now would be a good time to just pause, take a break, and then come back, unless you have a bit of time. This is a rather lengthy article, but it bears listening to. It definitely is worth reading. This article, Our Biblical Right to Confrontation, it comes from Proverbs 18 and verse number 17, which says, "The first to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him. Freedom is never so precious as when you realize you no longer have it. Justice is never so important as it is when you seek it, and it cannot be found. It may never seem quite so remarkable as when it is found in the hands of someone more powerful than you. What then? Because so many of us have grown up at a time in which the foundations of freedom and justice have already been laid, and our rights and privileges have long been established and regularly enjoyed. We may not have a true sense of appreciation for just how amazing they are and where they come from. To a large degree today, we take our freedom and the ability to secure justice for granted. But for most people in the past, and many still today, such luxuries were and are not common. If it was not for the Bible and its profound shaping influence on the founding of America and the drafting of its essential governing documents, it's doubtful we would enjoy the freedom we do, or that school children would even know the phrase "with liberty and justice for all." In the Bible, courts exist for the purpose of securing justice. In light of that, the Founding Fathers saw fit to add 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, of which 5 addressed specific means of securing that justice, called the Due Process Clauses. They include provisions such as the right to be safe from intrusive searches, to have a public trial, attorney, and a jury, to be free from self-incrimination or torture, to confront accusing witnesses, and to call witnesses in one's defense, etc. Where did those rights come from? Specifically, the Bible. Each of those provisions was biblically based and received special attention in the Geneva Bible, the version regularly carried to the shores of America by those persecuted in England and Europe for their religious beliefs. It's hard to overstate the impact that the Geneva Bible had in directly shaping America in areas ranging from education to civil government, private property to civil rights, and free enterprise to the courts. So much so, it is not surprising that the Geneva Bible is repeatedly featured in paintings of the early colonists, including as the centerpiece of the painting of the Pilgrims that hangs in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. The Geneva Bible, so called because it was first printed in 1560 in Geneva, Switzerland, was the work of some 24 religious leaders whom God raised up across Europe in the 1300s, 1400s, and 1500s. Leaders who called into question the practices of church and state that did not conform to the Scriptures. Although the Geneva Bible was a relatively large, 6 inches by 8 inches in size, it was still called a pocket Bible because individuals could own and carry one with them for personal use. Previous editions of the Bible had been huge and unwieldy, with some being over 2 feet in height, termed pulpit Bibles. They were often literally chained to the pulpits of churches. The objective for the Geneva Bible was twofold. Number 1, to get people to read and study the Bible for themselves rather than allowing someone else to tell them what it supposedly said. And number 2, to use the Bible to shape culture to reflect God's principles rather than vice versa. And vice versa had been the case for the previous millennia. The Geneva Bible was the most popular Bible of that era, going through 140 reprints from 1560 to 1644. A distinctive characteristic of this Bible was its marginal commentaries, largely the work of persecuted religious leaders, including those driven from Great Britain during the reigns of Bloody Mary and James I, two monarchs who advocated the divine right of kings and the authority of the state over the church. These marginal commentaries often pointed out where cultural customs differed from scriptural teachings, including how British and European judicial practices differed from scriptural precepts. So impacting and insightful were these marginal notes in the early colonial and founding era that they shaped much of America's judicial policies. A current federal legal text, titled Federal Practices and Procedure Federal Rules of Evidence, provides several instances of this. For example, when some leaders wanted to arrest Jesus, the Geneva Bible records the comments of one of the Pharisees' leaders, Nicodemus, who had gone to him before, and who was one of them, said to them, "Does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does?" John 7:51. Thus, the arrangement of a defendant and his right to know the official charges being preferred against him was a proper part of the legal process. The U.S. Constitution's provision regarding the judicial right of confrontation, the right of a defendant to bring out the rest of the story by cross-examining an accuser or even calling witnesses to testify in his own behalf. It's rooted in the principle found in Proverbs 18:17, which states, "The first to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him." The biblical basis for such a protective right is evidenced by the same federal legal text referenced above that cites 3 additional examples from the Geneva Bible that further illustrates this right of confrontation. Please note that the quotations within the text below are from the actual Geneva Bible, and thus hundreds of years old, which is why many spellings will seem unusual to today's readers. While the quotation is lengthy, we deemed its inclusion valuable for enlightening readers to better understand the source and basis for these judicial rights. As the text explains, and now I'm going to quote this, "After having been mobbed in the temple by those who thought it had desecrated it, Paul was rescued by the Romans and taken before the Sanhedrin. In a letter to the Roman governor, the Roman tribune explained his actions. And when I would have known the cause wherefore they accused him, I brought him therefore into your council. There I perceived that he was accused of questions of their law, but had no crime worthy of death or of bonds. But fearing that his enemies might attack Paul, I sent him straightway to thee, and commanded his accusers to speak before thee the things that they had against him." After his transfer to Caesarea, Paul was confronted with his accusers in a hearing before the Roman governor Felix. At this hearing, Ananias, the high priest, and the elders, with the assistance of an orator, apparently the equivalent of a lawyer, named Tertullus, appeared to prosecute Paul. Tertullus told the governor, "We have found this man a pestilent fellow, and a mover of sedition, and a chief maintainer of the sect of the Nazarites, who hath gone about to pollute the temple. Paul denied the charge and challenged his accusers to prove the things whereof they now accuse me. After explaining his actions in the temple, he, Paul, pointed out that there were witnesses with personal knowledge of his actions, who ought to have been present before thee and accuse me if they had aught against me. At this point, the Geneva Bible adds a note further remonstrating on the hearsay nature of the evidence against Paul, and I quote, "For his accusers spake but upon a false report, which these bellows or fellows of Satan had blown abroad, and durst not themselves appear." Festus laid Paul's case before King Agrippa, explaining that Paul's enemies were still demanding his punishment. Festus continued, and I quote, "To whom I answered, that it is not the manner of the Romans for favor to deliver a man to the death before that he which is accused have the accusers before him, and have place to defend himself concerning the crime." A second biblical passage relevant to the right of confrontation is the well-known but non-canonical tale of Jesus and the anonymous woman taken in adultery. The scribes and the Pharisees, allegedly trying to tempt Jesus to depart from the Mosaic law, brought the accused adulteress before him, told him that she had been caught in the act, and asked what should be done with her. The correct answer was A, she should be stoned to death. Jesus, however, refused to step into the trap and gave the famous but apparently apocryphal reply, and I quote, "Let him that is among you without sin cast the first stone at her." At this point, the story goes, her accusers slunk off one by one, leaving Jesus alone with the woman. The Geneva Bible continues, "When Jesus had lift up himself again, and saw no man but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." A popular manual for justice of the peace cited this passage for the proposition that no man is to be condemned without an accuser. But this makes sense only if accuser means someone willing to face the accused and make the accusation. It is obvious from the biblical passage that there were in fact accusers, but they had refused to confront the accused when it became apparent that this would require them to open their own character to impeachment. Hence, one could read this passage as supporting a right of confrontation. The third episode in the New Testament that is relevant to the right of confrontation is the trials of Jesus. The synoptics are in remarkable agreement on the relative details. Jesus was first taken before the Sanhedrin, where his enemies sought false witnesses who could provide evidence of a capital offense. But they found none, though many false witnesses came, partly because of their testimony did not show any crime, partly because their witness agreed not together. When they finally found 2 witnesses to accuse Jesus of blasphemy, then the chief priest arose and said to him, "Answerest thou nothing? What is the matter that these men witness against thee?" But Jesus held his peace. On further questioning, Jesus answered simply, "Thou hast said it," but eventually gave answers that were construed as blasphemous. He was then taken before Pilate, where he again gave non-responsive answers like, "Thou saidst it." And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, "Hearest thou not how many things they lay against thee?" But he answered him not one word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Commentators saw in it a justification for their refusal to take the oath ex officio, or self-incrimination. But if we turn to the account of Jesus' trials in John, the linkage between confrontation and self-incrimination becomes even stronger. John adds this to the appearance before the Sanhedrin, and I quote, "Jesus answered the high priest who was questioning him, I spake openly in the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, and in secret I have said nothing. Why ask thou me? Ask them which heard me, what I said unto them. Behold, they know what I said." In the latter appearance before Pilate, John adds the telling detail that his accusers remained outside for religious reasons, so that Jesus was denied confrontation before the Roman governor. John related that John answered him, "Sayest thou that of thyself, or did other tell it thee of me?" Pilate ignored the pointed inquiry into the hearsay nature of his knowledge. But readers of these 2 passages in John might plausibly have supposed that another reason for his refusal to answer the questions put to him by Pilate is that Jesus was denied the right to confront his accusers. This interpretation is strengthened if we add a passage from Luke's account of the appearance before the Sanhedrin. Jesus, being questioned about the accusation of blasphemy, said unto them, "If I tell you, ye will not believe it. And if also I ask you, ye will not answer me, nor let me go." Whatever this may have meant to John, it can be read, at least by modern eyes, as a claim of denial of cross-examination or of the right to make a defense. The Tanakh, or as it is known in the Bible, the Old Testament, has considerably more legal passages than are found in the Christian sources, including rules dealing with evidence. In the account of Paul's arrest in Jerusalem, we see the biblical examples of the right of a defendant to confront his accusers, the use of a lawyer to prosecute, a listing of the charges, the demand for due process and finishing proof, the right to call witnesses, and the objection to the admission of hearsay. In the case of the woman caught in adultery, we see the woman's right to confront her accusers, and when there was no one willing to come forward and face the accusers, the charges were dismissed. In Jesus' own trial, we see Jesus' non-responsive answers as his exercising what we have come to know as the Fifth Amendment, listed in the Bill of Rights, the right to avoid self-incrimination, not being compelled to be a witness against himself. That the commentators also note he was denied the right to confront his accusers. The challenge to hearsay evidence was ignored, and Jesus was denied the right of cross-examination or the right to make a defense or all evidence of just how much of our judicial process and practice find their origin and basis in the Bible. Many of these biblical judicial practices were abandoned during the millennia known as the Dark Ages, replaced with reprehensible practices in the courts of the Inquisition and later the modified Admiralty courts, courts of High Commission, and courts of Star Chamber. In those courts, the same individual served as judge, prosecutor, and jury. With no check and balance, the charged individual was always assumed to be guilty. Any person could be charged with a crime without his accuser being known. Those making the acquisitions were kept secret, and hearsay evidence was accepted. Confronting the accuser was not permitted, and attorneys were not allowed to offer a defense, and an individual could not only be compelled to give testimony against himself, but torture was also permissible to obtain that confession. The teachings of the Geneva Bible that contrasted proper judicial practices with these types of wicked ones became deeply inculcated in American thinking. Thus, when Americans separated from Great Britain and had opportunity to create their own governments, they specifically placed biblical due process protections directly into their state constitutions, including the right of confrontation. For example, that in all capital or criminal prosecutions a man hath a right to be confronted with the accusers and witnesses and to call for evidence in his favor. Virginia, 1776. That in all prosecutions for criminal offenses, every man hath a right to be confronted with the accusers or witnesses and to examine evidence on oath in his favor. Delaware, 1776. That in all prosecutions for criminal offenses, a man hath a right to be confronted with the witnesses and to call for evidence in his favor. Vermont, 1786. And when the federal Constitution was written, the Sixth Amendment likewise stipulated, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to be confronted with the witnesses against him and to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. This admirable feature regarding the right of confrontation is just one of the many provisions of American law directly shaped by the Bible. Incidentally, the monarchs of the 1500s and 1600s who practiced the judicial abuses condemned in the Geneva version did not appreciate the censure those commentaries leveled against them. One of those monarchs was King James I, whose courts had been especially harsh on those who did not conform to his state-established church doctrines. Disliking the Geneva Bible and its commentaries, he therefore authorized the funding of a new translation of the Bible about 1600. It was published in 1611, known as the King James Bible. It was translated from essentially the same manuscripts as the Geneva Bible, but it removed all the Reformers' commentaries, thus silencing the dissenting voice. In fact, the Geneva Bible's specific commentary note on Acts 24:20 that Paul's accusers spake but upon a false report, which was hearsay and therefore not permitted, was in direct contradiction to the practices in James' own courts, which permitted accuser by hearsay. Understandably, King James did not wish to see such commentaries in his Bible. Not surprisingly, the King James Bible became the official version of many British monarchs, and Great Britain made it illegal for British colonies to print a Bible in the English language, thus placing the printing of all English language Bibles under the supervision of the Crown, which promoted the King James Version, not the Geneva Bible. This is not to say that the King James Version is not a good or worthy version to read today. It is, but its history is largely unknown to modern Christians. When one thinks of the lasting legacy and the staggering impact of the Geneva Bible, complete with the notes and commentary from the Reformers who questioned and challenged many of the principles and practices of the Crown, and how it was this version of the Bible that first graced the shores of this country back at the founding of the Jamestown colony, and with the Pilgrims of the Plymouth colony, we owe a deep debt of gratitude to those who first began to wrestle with the Word of God for themselves, refusing to simply accept what others declared it to say, and chose to respond to the voice of freedom calling from within its pages. If it was not for them and their passion for the truth and courage to challenge the status quo, we might not be living in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us freshly examine the evidence in this case as to what are the true foundations of this country. What is its accurate history and its true spiritual heritage? We have a right to face our accusers, to call forth testimony from the eyewitnesses themselves, to reject the modern hearsay, such as our biblical right to confrontation. And that's the article for today, our biblical right to confrontation. So today, again, is April the 21st. We have read Psalms 112, Judges 13, 14, and 15, Proverbs chapter 19, and then this article, Our Biblical Right to Confrontation. Have an amazing rest of your day. Amen. And be sure to take the time to meditate on what you have heard today. God bless you, and we will see you again tomorrow.